So let's talk about restoration tools. Here in Photoshop, I am going to demonstrate several different restoration tools today and to give you a good idea of how to make some alterations. First thing you want to do, you want to start off on a layer other than your background. So I'm going to make a copy of the background layer, either by right-clicking and duplicating or dragging down to the plus symbol, or my favorite is using the shortcut Command J or Control J, depending on if you're on a Mac or a PC. So now that I'm on the new additional layer, I'm ready to start making these destructive edits using my restoration tools. So on my toolbar, I have several different restoration tools here. They're all on separate little icons, separate little buttons. And if your toolbar looks different, that's because I have the workspace, photography workspace chosen. And so that allows for these different tools to all stand as their own. If you have just an essentials workspace or one of the others, then these tools are still available, but they might be nested one under the other. So I recommend switching over to the photography workspace. All right, so starting off, we've got the spot healing brush tool, very similar to the spot removal tool of Lightroom. And when you mouse over the tools, you can see a small video of what's going to happen. Notice in this particular video, you can either do a single click or a click and drag. And the key to it is you want to have spots that you can isolate from the background, because the computer is going to take what's outside of the shape of my brush, and through the algorithms, it's going to replace and blend what's inside what I'm trying to get rid of. So when I say isolate, if I can, this little blemish here in the road, I'm going to remove. And so if I click and drag, whoops, wrong way. If I click and drag, I have now isolated. So it's the same as like drawing a circle around it. So it's all asphalt on the outer edges of my circle. When I release, it's going to blend for me. So I can do that time and again, whether it's a single click or whether I'm clicking and dragging. And again, as long as there's not some kind of a merge, like when I come up to this white line, if I were to touch the white line, then I'm going to get a little bit of a blurring and a merging with that white. So it's the key to this is using it in isolation. I can also make my brush bigger by using the right bracket key or changing it in the toolbar up above. And now I can do even larger areas. And there we go. Larger areas, as you can see, are not always as successful because that's a lot of information that the computer is trying to work with. So I can Command or Control Z, try that again and try it in smaller increments. And then I could continue to work that way. Now notice there's a little color problem here in my road. And part of the problem that has come from is somehow I toggled my tool up here, and instead of, it should not be luminosity, it should be under normal. So if I just undo these and do it again, now that it's under normal, I should get a better result, much better. Okay, so you're getting the idea of the spot healing brush. Now let's move to a couple new tools. So when it comes to power lines such as these are straight lines, and one of the best tools is to use the healing brush tool. So that's a separate tool, looks very similar. It's a Band-Aid, but it doesn't have those marching ants added to it. So this particular tool works great with lines, and it takes a sample from somewhere that you designate. So if you see my mouse moving right there, it has a little plus symbol. And so I'm ready to set my target. I have to hold down the Alt or Option key. My mouse turns to a target, and then I click once. I release the Alt or Option key. And now I'm ready to come over my power line. Notice it's turned blue because it's actually giving me a preview of what's going to happen when I click and drag. As I click and drag, I see the crosshairs up above, and that's the area the computer is stealing from to duplicate, but it's not going to be an exact duplicate. That's what the clone stamp tool does. An exact, this is going to blend. So once I release my mouse, the computer algorithms will blend those areas. So you have a really nice natural looking replacement. I'll do that one more time with this next power line. So again, hold down Alt or Option, click, release Alt or Option, and then move your mouse over the line and drag. And there we go. So we'll imagine that I've done the rest of these lines here. When you get to an area where it comes up to emerge, you're going to have some issues. It's going to get a little bit of blurring effect. Whereas up until now, you know, right at the edge right here and over here, I did have a little bit of blur, but so far it didn't, I wasn't worried about it yet. But once I'm getting into more fine tuning and to finalize this assignment, then I want to just scroll over here so you can see a little larger. Then I want to make sure it's a clean, restoration. So let's go ahead and try that same tool, and I'll show you what I mean by the merge. So Alt or Option to click, come down here, click and drag. See that merge just where I started on the left there? And as I approach the mountain right here, and I'm going to release my mouse, I have a little bit of a blurage. Okay, doesn't look really good. So I'm going to undo that. That brings us to our next tool. So if I can isolate, get it to where I don't have merges and I can just have the line only and have that circle going around the line, then it'll be a really clean restoration. So next I'm going to choose the Clone Stamp tool. Clone Stamp tool does make an exact duplicate. So if I can replace this area right in here where it merges with the mountain to a real looking mountain area, then I'll have some isolation. So similar to the healing brush tool, you want to take a sample. I'm going to take a sample from right here. So I'm going to hold down Alt or Option. My mouse turns to a target again, click once. And this time I'm going to come over here and click once again. And now I have replaced, I'm going to do it one more time. I've replaced that power line where it merges into the mountain. I've got some blue area there so I can draw a circle and isolate it. I'm going to do the same just a little bit lower. So I'm going to steal from this area, hold down Alt or Option, click once, release it, and then I can come a little more this direction. And now I have some pretty easy areas that are isolated that I can change. So I can come back to my healing brush tool, steal from the area up here, come down, and I've got a nice clean transition and restoration. Okay, I've got a few blemishes right here, so I can just steal from here, clean this up a little bit. There we go. Far better than when I had those blurs before. Okay, now another option that I could do brings us to yet another tool. So this part of the power line, I could draw a circle around it and have blue on the outer edge of my circle. So it's an isolated area. So this is a really easy way to fix within a restoration. So I could continue using the healing brush tool, but it would be easier for me to use the patch tool. So that introduces yet a fourth tool today, patch tool. Patch tool works, it blends like all the others except for Clone Stamp. Clone Stamp's an exact duplicate. All these others do some blending. So patch tool, I just draw a circle around this isolated area, making sure I've got my mouse, which will turn into marching ants, just in the blue. When I release, I get my marching ants, and then all I do is drag this up into the blue sky, release, and presto, it's gone. To get rid of my marching ants, it's Command or Control D. So you can see you can continue doing that until you remove the entire power lines. So where there's merges, use Clone Stamp. And then if you can isolate larger areas, then you can use the patch tool. So one last thing to kind of point out, I'm going to go ahead and go back to my healing brush tool, set my target, and get rid of a little bit more of this. And then I'm going to remove a good bit of a pole itself. Okay, so I almost have, whoops, try that one more time. So what I'm starting to do here is I'm creating an area that I could draw a circle around here, having it isolated by blue sky or even just the white clouds, but not any of these other black lines. And then I could use the patch tool to clean this up. So I'm going to come over to this side real quick and do the same thing, just to create a path for me to draw a circle. And up here as well. Okay, got a little bit of a blurring up there, so let's try that again. There, that's a little better. And patch tool. Remembering, oh, whoops, I forgot the bottom area here. Let's try that again. This time I'll use clone stamp, still from some of the blue sky here. There we go. So now you can visualize that I can draw a circle with the patch tool around this area because it is isolated. When I release, I have my marching ants. Now I'm just going to drag it over here, including a little bit of cloud area, release, and I'm done. So the more you can use these restoration tools to clean up a small area, to then clean up a bigger area is definitely to your advantage. It's more time efficient. So I could use the patch tool here. I could use healing brush. Healing brush would work great on the one that's blue, where you have sky with some of the clouds. I would probably use the patch tool. Or there's one last tool that can be used too, and this is called the content aware fill. So I can just go back to a regular lasso tool, and I'm going to go ahead and actually just grab all of these. And once I have marching ants, I right click over the selection and choose content aware fill. So this brings up a panel, a series of panels. And what it's showing me, I'm going to zoom out on this left side here. And so what it's showing me is what I'm trying to replace, and the green areas are what Photoshop is using to replace it. On the image on the right is a preview. So this would be my finished product. And so based on Photoshop finding similar colors and patterns, it's taking all of this area, it's going to fill it into there once I am done. That's a pretty good job. Probably better than I could have done doing all the other tools individually. So first off, if I didn't like what it did, I can, on the green side, on the left side, my mouse is turned to a minus, I can say, you know, take out some of this cloud. I don't want you to use that to sample and to create my, my replacement. And then it will refresh on the right-hand side. If you want to include areas, you can hold down the Alt or Option key and your mouse turns into a plus and you could add additional areas. So I could add more blue sky over here if I wanted. Okay, and then when you have a good preview, something you like, then come down on the right-hand screen. And most important thing to pay attention to is the output settings. So the default is it will put it onto a brand new layer, which sometimes might be helpful. In this case, I would prefer that it go onto my current layer that I'm making the adjustments on. Once I hit OK, Photoshop's going to do its little thing, and there we go. So Command D or Control D to remove the marching ants. So I could even take it one step further and go to a larger area, such as this. Notice I kept all within the same colors. Right click, Content Aware Fill. And you know, Photoshop didn't do too bad of a job. There's a little bit of awkwardness up here. And so I could actually use Clone Stamp and I could fix that up myself, clean that up a little bit better. So if you're happy with the results, then you would go ahead and hit OK. So I'll clean that area up in just a little bit with Clone Stamp. But next I want to show one last aspect, and that is when you have straight edges like this to clean. You can't just use content aware fill because it's not going to be quite the same abrupt edge. So in this case, you can combine clone stamp with the polygonal lasso tool. So I'm going to start off with the lasso tool because it makes straight lines and mimic the shape specifically around the edge of the sign up there. And then I can switch over to a clone stamp tool. I'll make my brush a little bigger. I can steal from here, so hold down that Alt or Option, click. And if I want to put that area right here, notice my mouse covers an area outside of the marching ants. When I click, it only impacts what's inside the marching ants. So that's why this is such a great solution. And I can merge from other areas too, to make it look much more realistic. So that's how you would get rid of areas and keep that perfectly straight edge with the edge of the sign by combining the polygonal lasso along with clone stamp. So using those tools and taking a little bit more time, you can hopefully see that it's not going to be that difficult to remove the entire power pole and the power lines. You do want to always make sure that you zoom back out again and preview. So I still would need to come back in with my clone stamp and clean this area. Obviously, I still have more power lines over here too. But that should be enough to get you started. And now it's just a matter of taking time and practicing.